Hello and welcome to this episode of Token Jester, an insight into outsider dance. I'm Aishani Ghosh and I'm your host for this series. I'm a company artist at See the Patel Dance, but I'm a freelance artist, practitioner and researcher in my own right. Token Jester was created to delve into the UK and the South Asian dance industry, Bharatanatyam and so much more. I'll be in conversation with Seema Chopra today, where we'll talk about the menstrual cycle, training with the menstrual cycle, hormones, and all things to do with that. A quick disclaimer about this episode is that we'll be using the term female throughout the episode, but it's in regard to sex, not gender, as we acknowledge that not everyone identifies with that term that experiences a menstrual cycle. Also, this is for you to take because you know your body's best. You can take whatever information from this podcast if it's relevant for you. I have been so inspired by your journey, your progression, your career, and it would be amazing if you could just give a bit of insight into who is Seema Chopra.
So I call myself an Integrative Strength Conditioning Coach.
Amazing.
The reason being is that I don't feel like strength and conditioning summarises all of the aspects of what I do. I feel that I am a researcher, a coach, a dancer, and a healer. So, my work kind of covers all of that. Generally, day to day, you'll see me working with women to optimize their training, help them understand their hormones and their energy, because it's not always the same, as you'll go into later, and just helping them kind of optimize their fitness, but also kind of recover and balance out their lives. I also work with athletes, and dancers for me are athletes. And that is very much about understanding their dance form, understanding the demands of that dance form, and how we can train that dancer's body to support them through the dance. So I've worked with all types of populations. I used to work at Trinity Laban with the dancers there. I set up the South Asian Dance Medicine and Science Association a long time back, and that was very much for us South Asian dancers. So that is my special interest, I would say.
Amazing. One of the reasons why Active Shakti has inspired me so much is because you really educate females on how to train with their menstrual cycle and not around their menstrual cycle. And I was wondering why you think it's so important that athletes and dancers know how to do this to optimize our physical and mental well-being.
Yeah. So Active Shakti means, first of all, Shakti means the dynamic feminine force. And the reason why I put active in front of it is because I think that a lot of females, women, need to have their Shaktis activated. So that's kind of my job. In terms of dancers and athletes, I feel that the recommendations given to them have come from research done on males. So it doesn't consider the different ways in which a woman will show up each day, each week for her training. So therefore, I feel that research needs to be done specifically within females. It's really important because if you train with your hormones, you're respecting your energy. You're respecting your how your hormones have impacted you that week, how you can adapt your training. And if you can adapt your training, then it's only going to make you a better dancer.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I think I've always thought about how I can have agency over myself in the studio, not to just give myself the best experience that I can, but also how my colleagues can have a great experience with me and the choreographer and anyone that's coming into the space, because it's such an intimate and powerful space to be in that you always want to show up the best that you can for that day. And I was wondering, is there anything that female athletes, or you think female athletes, should be aware of to track or to think about, or to just be aware of, even if it's not necessary to track yet, both in and out of the studio?
So I feel that, first of all, I feel like the conversation needs to be more open. You know, like it's not just the dancer or athlete going away and discovering their own cycle, but it's just how is that communicated within the studio, within your environment, to the choreographer or your coach, and that conversation requires, just trust, but also it shouldn't be taboo, which is what it always has been. It's changing, which is great. But another thing to bear in mind is that everyone's cycle is individualized. So, if you're suffering in one week of your cycle, the next person might not be suffering at that same time. So it's always going to be your unique cycle. And so that's why it's really important for each individual to track their unique symptoms. They might not have any, to be honest.
Yeah.
Some people get away with just floating through, and it's fine. But if you're experiencing fatigue, dizziness, muscle soreness, sickness, pain, like extreme pain, all of these things are going to impact the way that you show up that day. So how are you going to work around that? And what kind of how flexible are you going to be, and how are you going to prepare yourself if it happens frequently? If week 3 always looks the same, how can you look at those symptoms and think, right, this is what I need. I need different food. I need more rest. I need sleep earlier. All of those, and you can put those into place once you know. If you don't know, you're just going to fall behind.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Do you notice any patterns within South Asian females that you've worked with?
I have to be honest, I haven't had the conversation yet. I haven't had the conversation yet. These conversations that I've had thus far has been with predominantly white females.
Interesting.
And I was having these kind of conversations at Trinity Laban before leading a strength and conditioning session, before leading a Kathak session with the contemporary dancers. Where are you at in your cycle? How's your body feeling today? What can you do to be able to get yourself into the right frame of mind? But in terms of South Asian dancers, I haven't danced in that setting for many, many years now. So the last time I remember, there was no way that I was having that conversation. So, and I definitely didn't hear it. But now I hear whispers of it, and I hear people talking about periods, neurodivergence, just injuries, and owning that. So I'm sure that it's changing. I'm sure that there's still a way to go with it.
So then, what would you say are the important questions and conversations we need to have within the South Asian community in regards to this?
I feel that every dancer should be educated about their menstrual cycle, first of all, so that they understand their own cycles. I think that every dancer should be tracking their own cycle. I feel that teachers, no matter how old, should be educated too, and this, like, it should be an open subject. Therefore, the types of conversations that could be had is like, this is how I'm feeling today, teacher. I need to take I need to reduce my intensity today, but I am still here, and I am still going to put full effort in. It's I feel that would be amazing to be able to do that. Or like just being a bit more transparent about it, because there's so much that I feel that Asian culture could lend to this, not by shutting that woman away and you cannot dance, you cannot be on stage, etc., but to be able to respect it and kind of nurture it in the way that Indian practices can do so well. We've got yoga. You know, Iyengar yoga is amazing for recovering or like restorative work, especially for the period. They've got a menstrual health program for that. You know, the Ayurvedic foods and medicines. There's so much that can lend. If the conversation is had, people have this knowledge. It can just feed into supporting the female artist, I think.
Yeah, it's really important. I think taking care of yourself in the studio is super important, but how you take care of yourself outside of the studio is also, if not equally important. And I think we tend to forget that as dancers. You know, how we sleep, how we eat, how we take care of the body and the mind outside of the studio do heavily influence how we show up in the studio as well.
That's really important. Supporting yourself as an artist outside the studio is just as important as what you're showing up as in the studio. And yeah, you'll be just by having that autonomy, having that understanding of your own body and nurturing it in the way that it needs, that your body needs. Like, yeah, every time you rock up to the studio, you will be the best version of yourself because it will feel so good to know that you've put in what you needed. You know, for example, I don't dance regularly anymore, but I strength train, and you know, I know when I need more recovery days. I know when I need to eat more, and I know that in the luteal phase, which is the second part of the menstrual cycle, I know that I need to sleep so much more. Suddenly, I need 9 hours sleep, not 7 to 8 hours. You know, so I put all of those practices in automatically now, and it just means that I don't have these huge slumps. I don't go into depressive modes. I don't get burnt out. You know, so that's really important.
So, how did you get into understanding your body? Because I think we often talk about we need to learn how to track or we need to learn about how to understand the body, but what does that actually look like? What does the education look like? What does it mean?
Yeah. So it's quite a complicated story, but I'm willing to go there. I would say I was a Catholic dancer with neurodivergence, meaning that with my ADHD, I would tick all of the boxes all the time, show up like in, you know, just at full force, you know, attending all of the rehearsals, never being like just putting down the accelerator at all times. I was fast and I was forceful and, you know, and proud, but I was crashing so hard. You know, and that encouraged me to look into what was happening with me. I think I read a book by Maisie Hill called Period Power, and that really gave me an insight into how to communicate your symptoms and how to be open about it, but also how to start kind of tracking and understanding what each week brought you, you know, and how it's not all kind of loom and doom and, you know, it's a week before my period, so therefore I'm just going to be a nightmare. No, you know, like, it can look different, and that's what I started to discover, that there was a magic within each of those weeks, and then I realised from tracking it, I was using like Clue app, that there were like some patterns that were emerging, and especially with my ADHD symptoms. You know, I noticed that I was very hyperactive at certain times. I was noticing that I was crashing at certain times, and then how this was impacting like my exercise and my dance. You know, that was all showing up. So I decided to start periodizing it, and it's got nothing to do with the period, but like in strength and conditioning, we've got periodization. So it means that every athlete trains to different intensities each week. So if that is their full-time job, which it wasn't for me, but if that is your full-time job, you would never be doing sprints every single day, every single week. You know, you would be doing sprints from a few days, and then you'll be coming down and then taking the intensity up, maybe undulating.
Yeah.
So I decided to apply that to my symptoms.
Amazing.
I was like, okay, so this is when I feel the strongest. I'm going to work out and dance as much as I can. Then I'm going to take the intensity down. Then I'm going to focus on technique, alignment, etc. And then in the last week, I'm just going to really focus on my Iyengar restorative sessions and like just bringing everything down because my nervous system needed to calm down. It was always high.
Yeah.
That's when I realized that it wasn't just me. It wasn't just being neurodivergent that benefited from this. Most of my clients and the dancers I was working with were not neurodivergent, but they were all running around with this like supercharged nervous system.
Yeah.
And I was like, everyone needs to come down. It's not just me, you know, like you're all just going for it. You're skipping lunch, you're you're running around, going from A to B, dancing all day, not getting in the right nutrients. You know, like who's going to bring you down? You know, so that's why I started to apply my theory for myself onto others, and then I saw that it started to really help them. And it also really helped women who are high performing at work, highly stressed, and they had no reprieve. So like I developed like I called it the synced method, which I could apply to each individual according to their symptoms, because I found that no two people had the same symptoms on the same week.
No, that makes total sense. Total sense. Yeah, I really enjoy how you bring the nervous system into this conversation because it's not like you bleed on your period and
that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
But it's actually a whole cyclical cycle every month that includes the nervous system, that includes all the energies in the body, and to talk about it and to think about it more holistically seems a lot more conducive to understanding our mental and our physical health. So super interesting that you do that.
It was impacting my mood. The follicular phase would make me very hyperactive and it would make me burn out. So actually where everybody was taking it easy in the luteal phase, I was having to do it much earlier because I was burning out so quickly. But now it's no longer the case because I know that it's coming and therefore I schedule in the rest days. You know, so at the moment I'm in the ovulation phase and I know that I'm really like confident and chatty and everything, but I know that after this I'll need to go and rest. You know, so I will put that in purposely. So.
And do you find that injury rates vary depending on what stage of the cycle that you're in?
It's tough to say. I think there's some research out there that kind of says that women are getting more injured in their ovulation phase because during the ovulation phase your estrogen levels are so high, and that increases the laxity in your joints. So like pregnant women, for example, have got so much estrogen at that time that they're super flexible. You know, so that's what they say, and they say that lots of ACL knee injuries occur in female footballers around that time. And you know, if you look on social media, everybody's like, "Me too, me too, me too." You know, so like people are saying that is the case. However, I think it's very difficult to conclude that because there are so many other factors that, you know, like how did that person sleep? How did, you know, what other injuries did they have before? You know, we can't base it all on the menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle research is very tough because of the individualized responses to hormones.
And so do you find that the research that has been conducted so far is actually applicable and you can implement it into your programs, or is it much more valuable for you still at this point to go off lived experiences?
Lived experiences, because the tricky thing with social media is that people are taking scientific studies and delivering it to a large audience. I don't think it's so applicable yet, you know, because they're testing females, for example, 20 females, all with unique responses to their hormones. They're not going to get a solid piece of like a pattern in their results, anything conclusive. So therefore, it's always inconclusive. But they always say in the conclusions that training should be adapted to the individual. Yeah. But then it's delivered to a huge on a huge platform like Instagram, and everybody's taking in that information and gonna. I don't think it connects. I don't feel like people can take that information. You know, they need to really understand, just fill the gap and understand their own bodies and what they need to just to support themselves.
It's very interesting because, at least for me, and I know for others that I've talked to, research makes people feel safe. Because you can be like, it's backed by science. So it must be a fact.
Yes.
But what that does is sometimes I think it takes away the intuition of learning and learning and understanding the body. Because while the research might be factual and correct for the participants that they researched on, you need to still then apply it onto your own body intuitively.
And you know, no coach, teacher, doctor is going to know your body in the way that you do. You know, because yes, you might show that, you know, you're higher in estrogen that 1 week, and therefore, oh, you must be feeling like this, right? And therefore you have to train like that. Well, not really, because you understand that estrogen complements you and you really enjoy it. So therefore, what does that matter? You know, there are lots of things that we can borrow from science and from sports science or dance science, but fundamentally you need to apply it to your body, and you're the only person that can do that.
Yeah. I think I sometimes find it overwhelming, if not difficult, to track things in my body. Probably because I get caught up in life, and the first thing, and wrongly the first thing to go, is like taking that second to sit with my body and see what it's signaling to me and consciously make decisions based off that. And also because things are confusing. Am I fatigued because of my menstrual cycle, or have I just not slept well for the past few days? Or am I missing a nutrient accidentally in my diet for the past few days, you know?
I have to say, if there isn't an issue, maybe don't go looking for it.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're dancing well, you're not getting injured. You feel like you're rocking up with good energy, you're not burning out. You're not in pain. Great. That's fantastic. Like, you know, you don't really need to look for a problem. But I still think that there is absolutely no harm, regardless of whether your brain has gone at 100 miles an hour and you've thought about every single task that you need to do this year in those 5 minutes. You've done it. As in, like, you've given yourself the opportunity to engage with yourself. You know, and within those hectic moments, there will always be tiny, like, little seconds and little flashes of clarity and connection with your energy, and I think that's a great place to start.
Definitely.
Yeah, because whatever tests I run on you, you know, like your smartwatch is going to tell you something different to what you feel. You know, you think you haven't worked out very hard, but your watch is telling you something totally different. You know, it's your mind is going to interpret the events and symptoms so differently to what data can tell you. So that's what's worth noting, I think. So I usually give my clients a spreadsheet, a classic spreadsheet, with you know, like how is your body feeling today? So bloatedness, pain, sickness, diarrhea, constipation, all of that kind of stuff. I'm feeling weak, I'm feeling strong, I'm feeling powerful, I'm feeling, just what do I feel capable of doing? And then so just remembered I created an ebook, and in that ebook it then says, this is the kind of workout I did today. I danced for 6 hours, or I went to the gym and I did a heavy lifting session, and this is how I felt afterwards. So it's like, it's not just how do I feel right now, because that might look different to how you feel 6 hours later.
Yeah.
You probably just haven't woken up properly yet. So like, how do you feel at different stages of the day after doing exercise, and how did you feel yourself, that day? And then how is your mental health like? Are you feeling down? Are you feeling close, isolated? Do you not want to be around your dance friends today, even though you have to be in a room full of them?
Yeah.
So like, and patterns do emerge, but it's almost just like it can be used as like a diary, or if you do have symptoms that you're struggling with, it could reveal something.
But deeper than that, I think a conversation that I often don't I don't hear about in relation to the menstrual cycle is mental health. Because we all know that there's PMS, there's people make joke of the hormonal mood swings or the cramps, but it's really deep. A lot of women have PMD, which is an extreme form of depression during their period, or people's mental health really does get impacted by this hormonal cycle. So I think there should be a conversation around how we can be sensitive to the hormonal changes occurring in the body, alongside how that impacts the mental health of the person.
You might be really sensitive to the change from the first half of cycle to the second half. Most women are really sensitive to the initial dip. So if estrogen goes up and then suddenly it dips, and it's just that bit that they're really sensitive to, but they're not sensitive to the rest of it. So the rest of it I'm usually fine with. That bit I'll probably get ill.
Yeah.
So it's just, I just know that now because I'm just so aware of it.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
The link between mental health and
and then some people will feel more isolated. Some people will feel like they just need to put their head down and just close off from the world. But that's not always possible when you're part of a team or you're part of a dance company. So then what do you do about that? Like before you come into your session, do you take a little bit of extra time to have a walk outside, listen to some of your favorite music? Do you take your favorite person away and just say, hey, can we just like chat for a bit? Build up a little bit more of a connection. Do you do some kind of ritual together at the beginning of your session where you're all united and like know where each other are at, and you're there for each other? Would somebody like go, Shani's really suffering at the moment, I'm going to bring her a nimble bunny or something? I don't know, just like
a nimble bunny.
I'm just like to think just examples, but or here's a painkiller. But just if you don't have those conversations, then it's just you, and it can be very isolating. At home, I used to, because you've got a big calendar up on the wall, I used to mark it with like something red, or or put like a face or something on the blackboard, just so that my husband knew like when it was coming. Because also men and boys and girls actually are still like, oh, you're on your period, always time of the month, and that's it. It's not like, it's like, oh, you're really creative during this time, or do you know that you dance much better during this time, or that you're much more communicative, or maybe I need to give you a bit of time out. Like, it's so nice to be able to say at home to your loved ones, time out, this is my time. I'm not here today. And that's okay. And it's amazing once you keep having that conversation. At first they're like, really? And then after a while they're like, okay, cool, I've got this. Just you take the time that you need, and that feels good, right? If anything, that feels great, just to give yourself for everyone to understand each other. But then it's not just I just thought I'm really harping on here, but it's not just women who need that time out. Then you realise once you start giving yourself permission to do it, giving yourself permission to recover from busy situations, from hectic rehearsals, or whatever it is, the males need it too. They don't have a period, but they do need time out too. So it just everyone just becomes a little bit more generous, a bit kinder.
Yeah.
They've just got a bit more awareness of people's. It's not just women that's like suffering here.
Yeah.
Everyone's living this high-paced life, and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform as dancers, but in everyday life as well, in general. So everyone needs a bit of time out, and male athletes get that with their training. So why are we not putting it in?
True. Yeah. Why are we not scheduling in these moments for ourselves within our training or within the touring period? Taking into considerations whether you're touring in another country or you're rehearsing in another city, we can schedule these things in for ourselves. Yeah.
Because in an athlete's periodization model, you would have pre-competition, competition, preparation phase. So how can you apply that? You know that you're in competition when you're going off on tour.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do before tour? How are you going to plan for after the tour?
Yeah.
Because you know you're going to crash.
Yeah.
So therefore, are you going to put into your calendar day off or days off? I've only just started to do that. Even if it's an event, it's something really important to me that I know that I'm going to put those energy into.
Yeah.
Just mark it in your diary. When it flashes up on your screen, you feel so proud.
It's so true. We need to put these things into place to take care of ourselves now, but also our future self.
And that takes mental preparation also. Knowing where you're going, knowing what kind of food is going to be available. Doing your research beforehand and figuring out when you can rest. Because the more you rest, a rested athlete, a rested dancer is going to be a very well performed one. Yeah. So you can see fatigue on a dancer. You can see, especially with South Asian dance when you're dancing on stage for hours, you don't want to see a fatigued dancer. So that really needs to be that's extra care that needs to be taken.
Not to generalize or clump, but do you find that a lot of your clients are South Asian females?
Can I be completely honest?
Yeah.
Zero.
Really?
I've got 0 Asian clients.
Okay.
They're all white. And no matter what background they come from, whether they were ex-athletes or currently engaging in that, the conversation is very much happening with white people. I have a lot of Asian followers. Yeah. But the conversation isn't happening. So, yeah. But the change that I would really like to see is I would like to see, kind of touching upon the South Asian dance medicine and science. I published my first research article on recovery in Kathak dance. Okay. So like when you dance on stage and then you come off, do you actively recover or do you just sit down? And what happens to your blood lactate, your heart rate, and what are the symptoms? And I measured those things. We did like blood testing and stuff like that. And I found that there was no significant difference. As in, like, you could go and jog around for 20 minutes, or you could just sit down and do nothing, and you recovered the same. Really? Yeah. So that was the first piece of Catholic research that had been done. And now we're seeing more research being performed in South Asian dance, scientific, about the dancing body, especially in Bharatanatyam with knee injuries, etc. But what I really want to see more researchers coming forward and more practitioners coming forward I set up I don't know if you saw the Active Shakti Collective.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I set that up because I want people like me to come forward and showcase their work.
Yeah.
So that we also get an opportunity to stand in this country and tell people like how it differs, like what Asian researchers say, how it's different, what our needs are, but also to that we've got such talented teachers and researchers and coaches. But I want to give them like a platform to stand out, because to be honest, whenever I've applied for jobs in the industry in which I work, which is dance science, sports science, and health, I don't fit into that box in their eyes.
Yeah.
But there is a box here that needs filling.
Yeah.
So I'm calling people to come forward so that we can create our own.
Yeah.
We can go out and give the talks. We can tell people how our bodies work. How we can educate the teachers and the students on menstrual cycles and help all of these artists to optimize their performance.
Yeah.
And we don't have to rely upon other corporations to do it.
It's so true. And do you find that there are a lot of differences in the South Asian female body, or is research just too nascent?
Every single genre will present a different, they have different demands. The Kathak body is like, we stand upright, but most people kind of lock their knees out and their hips. And like so much emphasis put on the feet, but we don't create the same shapes as Bharatanatyam. Right? We don't. Sorry, not you. We don't.
Anamandi, yeah.
We don't create the same like diagonal shapes, and we don't have the depth and the jumps and all that kind of stuff. So it has to be investigated separately. You can't say, oh, Seema did a South Asian dance study on recovery and let's apply it to all South Asian dance. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
The dynamic, the demands of each dance are very unique. So same study would need to be performed in each genre to be able to understand. So people see it as Indian dance. It's like, no, like there's so much
specificity.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's true.
And that requires a lot of research. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
But what about you? Do you feel like people are having a conversation more?
That's a good question. I think between my peers, we're a lot more open about these conversations within the South Asian community. And when I mean peers, I mean friends that are also colleagues. I think we're a lot more open to having this conversation and talking about it. In the contemporary industry, I have just felt the two extremes of either it is talked about and it's acknowledged and great, or it's just completely not even broached as a topic. And if I think about choreographers, I'm super lucky to have worked with 3 female choreographers within my career so far that have brought in the conversation, and 2 are in the South Asian industry and 1 is in the contemporary industry. But I also feel like that's super rare still to have that conversation. And I mean, I would love to have these conversations more, to have that agency over your body, to be able to feel like you can say it, because I think it's helpful for everyone. Imagine you're feeling sensitive one day to touch, and if you can just openly say that in the studio, or for example, the choreographer is experiencing some symptoms, she can really openly say that I'm experiencing menstrual symptoms today. I'm not feeling my best. If something arises in my tone of voice, it is not personal. I think we can mitigate a lot of niggles by opening up these conversations. Yeah, and conversations are happening. I'm just not sure how these conversations then get implemented into the studio, and what does that look like realistically?
You have to create that culture.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight. But I think we're at a huge advantage of having social media, and that these conversations can be publicised. Whereas before it would have all been behind the studio door. So for example, there are a couple of girls that trained with me in Kathak, and now they've created their own platform about neurodivergence,
Amazing.
Autism and ADHD, and I had no idea at that time even what neurodivergence was, when I was training with them. So like things are changing so much, and they're able to kind of showcase like how we can work together and explain what everyone's needs are. But it will take time. It will take time, but it requires. I don't think we can make change unless people are curious about it. Like I still feel like some people aren't aware or even curious about how their bodies work.
Yeah.
So you have to have that curiosity. You have to ask questions. You have to want to learn. And then with that, you start making other connections. You start understanding things more, and then a conversation will happen. But if you don't have that curiosity and it's closed off, then you'll just be dancing on your own without being connected to the people around you, which is possible, but it doesn't really bode well for a group performance, for example.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What brilliant words to conclude this interview on. But I think it's super important. You're absolutely right. At the end of the day, we have to create this change for ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you're a dancer in the space, how do you be open and communicate about where you are in the cycle? But also if you're leading the space, how do you actively and consciously think about it when you're leading the room? Or how do we open up the conversations of how are you feeling in the body today? Because at the end of the day, we are the change that we see.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that. It's not how are you? Because people always say it in the English way. I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's how's your body feeling today? And saying the word period.
Yeah.
Just say period. Like it is something that's always happened to women.
Yeah.
And it can really be celebrated. And I personally think that being on your period is a very creative phase. I think you can create amazing choreography during that time. And even if you are lying at home with a hot water bottle over your wound space, you're able to kind of just switch off and connect and come up with the ideas. When you start visualizing things, start practicing things in your mind, you can still go back and perform as well, right? So give yourself the rest that you need, but understand yourself, be curious, and connect.
Oh wow, amazing! Thank you. Thank you, and hopefully more conversations to come.